Okay, we're on to part 5 of my video series, and it's going to be the James Jordan story. We're going to start August the 4th, 1993. A man by the name of Hal Locklear is going fishing. Hal lives near a place in Marlboro County, South Carolina, which is the northeast part of South Carolina, and it lives in walking distance of a place called Gum Swamp, which is a fishing hole. Well, when Hal gets to his favorite fishing hole, before he starts casting his line, he looks out and he sees something strange. And what we find out is it's a dead body. It's a body of a deceased black gentleman that is decomposing. Well, Hal runs back, and these are the days before cell phones. Hal runs back and calls the authorities. An autopsy is done. And what we find out is it's a 6 foot tall, approximately 180 pound black gentleman with a single gunshot wound to his chest. And they find it's a .38 caliber pistol. After the autopsy is done, they find that the gentleman's had extensive dental work done. So, in lieu of evidence, they remove his jaw. They remove his jawbone, and they also remove his hands for fingerprinting. And the body is cremated, and the clothes, they took his clothes and for some reason they buried the clothes, and that may pop up later on. But a day later in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is over 60 miles away from Bennettsville or Marlboro County, South Carolina, a red SC400 Lexus is found abandoned down a long dirt road in near Fayetteville, North Carolina. And State Patrol, Highway Patrol come on the scene, and in their investigation, they find out that the Lexus came from Chicago, Illinois. And when they call that part in, when they call the actual dealership, they find out that the car is titled to none other than NBA superstar, Chicago Bulls small forward, Michael Jordan. Then what they end up finding out from there is the car not only belonged to Michael Jordan, but it was a gift to his father. Now we're on to James Jordan. And what we found out is James Jordan, almost 2 weeks before that, July 22nd, went out to where the Jordans are originally from, or where Michael grew up, to Wilmington, North Carolina. He went to attend a funeral. And later on, after leaving the funeral, he went and had a visitation with the family and sat around and told stories or whatnot. And what he told them, he had planned on driving back to Charlotte, North Carolina that night, which that's probably around 3.5 hour drive. Because he was going to take a flight from Charlotte to Chicago to play in a charity golf tournament with Michael. And during these 2 weeks, Mr. James Jordan's 57th birthday passed. There's no missing persons report. And he had several engagements that he missed. And that part has yet to be explained. And no explanation ever came from that. But the search was on for Mr. Jordan, and it centered in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
James Jordan was found shot to death here on August 3rd and floating in a creek just 50 yards from the border of North and South Carolina.
Today it is with regret that I advise you that a body located in Bennettsville, South Carolina has been positively identified as the body of Mr. James Jordan.
The only thing we know is that the cause of death was a single gunshot wound to the chest that severed the aorta.
Elder Jordan was last seen alive July 22nd in North Carolina. His partially stripped car was found there in a wooded area near Fayetteville August 5th, but not identified as his until a week later. A television news report of the car's discovery was the catalyst that allowed the Marlborough County, South Carolina coroner to piece together the fact that the body was James Jordan. The fact that the body was found miles from the car and in another state has led the FBI, which has joined the investigation, to presume kidnapping was involved.
We're looking into simply the kidnapping of James Jordan and the circumstances surrounding his death.
James Jordan's absence had not been reported by the Jordan family, and because no missing persons report was on file in either North or South Carolina, the coroner ordered the body cremated on August 6th.
The problem that I was faced with was what to do with the remains once the autopsy was performed. I do not regret the decision, would make the same decision again.
Okay, now with the world watching, authorities descend on Fayetteville, North Carolina, the scene of the spot where Michael Jordan's father, James Jordan's car, is found. And in quick order, they find out who parked the car where they found it. There's four young black gentlemen, and they fess up. They say, hey, yeah, we parked the car there, and we stripped the car, and we took all the car parts, and we're selling them. But somebody brought us the car. And later on, they find out that there was a fella named Daniel. There's a black guy, and he had a friend with him named Larry, who was a Native American guy. And they go on to tell that Daniel was an aspiring rapper, and they had made a music video when they brought the car up on the campus of Fayetteville State University. And the way they knew Daniel was through his brother, who was a soldier at Fort Bragg. His name was David Moore. Now they go to Fort Bragg and get in touch with Mr. Moore. And Mr. Moore informs them that, yes, I have a brother named Daniel. And yes, he was driving a Lexus 400 red. And he began to examine the car when the fellas brought it there and saw some stuff in there that was alarming to him, and told him to leave with the car. So they find out that Daniel is none other than Daniel Green. Now, through further investigation, they look into Daniel, and they find out Daniel has a friend named Larry. And Larry's last name is Larry Dimley. So, August 5th, around August the 8th is when they pick up Daniel. And they bring Daniel down and start to ask him questions, but they do it under the pretense of stolen car parts. There's some car parts that we found stolen, and we linked them to you. Do you mind? Well, when they get him there, there's two Robeson County detectives, a SBI special investigator, and an FBI agent. Now, all these guys are in a room, and with a high-profile case like this, that would be normal. But the abnormal part is another person was in the room. And he's got a connection to these stories. The other person in the room is District Attorney Johnson Britt. Now, if the last name Britt sounds familiar, well, we've done quite a few stories on a fella named Britt that was a district attorney. And it's none other than Johnson Britt's cousin, Joe Freeman Britt, the world's deadliest prosecutor, Guinness Book of World Record holder. Yes, they're cousins, and they both was district attorneys of Robeson County. Now, is that coincidence? Is that the good old boy system? Is that he's my cousin, let him in? Who's to say? Because Johnson does go on further in his career and criticize his cousin, Joe Freeman Britt, and how he did business. But Johnson Britt did business the same exact way. And it's obvious because here you got an FBI agent, but Johnson Britt has taken over the investigation. You know why? Because the DA and the sheriff are the two most powerful men in Robeson County. We've all talked about this, and we've all seen this, and we know this is the fact. And per usual, you got two young men, both of them's 18 years old at the time. They separate them. Now, they had a story for what they would tell the police when the police started to question them, if and when the police questioned them about the car. But it fell apart because they had them separated. They wasn't in the same room. And we all know how that goes. Immediately, they try to separate and crush and sever any ties that you would have to each other by saying, "He telling me that you did it." That's the beginning of the end for so many stories. He's telling me that you did it. And they hold these fellas, and nobody really can produce the document that either the guy signed it, said, "I waive my right to counsel. I'm speaking to you voluntarily." Nobody does it. Now, it's briefly played on one of the so-called confession tapes. But even the SBI agent couldn't say for sure, and he couldn't testify in open court that that happened. So now is the quest for a confession. And they keep the guys in there for days on end interviewing them. And I mean, it's a revolving door. You got the detectives from Robeson County, and then it switches over to the SBI, and then it switches over to the FBI. And then the entire time you got Johnson Britt interjecting. And it's so long of an interview for both guys that they ran out of tape. They taped the interviews. That should tell you how long they interrogated these young men. And they're 18, they're adults. But how wise and how smart were you at 18? Did you know your rights? Did you know the Fifth Amendment? Did you know the Fourth Amendment? Did you know the First Amendment? At 18. At 18. So the guys go on and they implicate the other person, but not themselves. Both do the same exact thing. He did it, I watched. He did it, I helped. He did it, I wasn't involved, except to help clean it up. That both of them tell the same exact story. Both tell the same exact story, except Larry's story is he was with Daniel. Daniel killed James Jordan. Daniel's story is, I was here, Larry did it, he came and got me, I helped him clean it up. So these are the stories. So basically they got confessions without being confessions.
In North Carolina, 2 men have been arraigned on charges of first-degree murder in the killing of James Jordan. The 18-year-old suspects, Larry DeMary and Daniel Green, are also charged with armed robbery and conspiracy to commit armed robbery. Their next court appearance is scheduled for September 3rd. DeMary and Green are being held without bond.
Well, I will not say that we have a confession. I don't use that word, but I will give you that we do have statements from both defendants.
What about the gun? Do you have a murder weapon?
We do not have the gun in our possession at this time. We're still working on that to recover the gun.
Investigators say Jordan was shot dead napping in his car by a highway near Lumberton, North Carolina.
All right, now they got what you call so-called confessions. Which they eventually eventually the guys, lawyers and counsel punch holes, but see, they're co-defendants. They're against each other. They can't work together. So eventually the guys, counsel do poke some holes in the confessions that they had, but it was much to do about nothing. But to carry on with the timeline, now that they got these confessions, now law enforcement needs to put concrete evidence instead of hearsay evidence together. So they need to link them to James Jordan, to the car, and tighten this little case up and finish it off. So through some kind of coercion, and in my opinion, it was the fact that he was going to get to go home. They coaxed Daniel Green into producing some evidence. And how it happens is there's an SBI agent that's working the case, that's a special investigator. And his name is Tony Underwood. Now, Tony Underwood, he was off work the weekend, and he got a call. And his higher-ups told him, said, hey, you need to check in Sunday morning and talk to the sheriff, because we got an update. And when he shows up, the sheriff tells him, he said, hey, I haven't done the interview in a long time. He said, I want you to do the interview. I'm going to be there. And Underwood says, okay. Well, strange enough, what happens is Hubert Stone goes in, gets Daniel Green out of his jail cell, puts him in handcuffs and shackles, and walks him to his personal car. So you got the sheriff, Hubert Stone, driving, Daniel Green sitting in the front seat, passenger side, and Mr. Underwood, special agent for the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, sitting in the back. And Mr. Underwood has no idea where they're going. And he has no idea, number one, if Daniel has agreed to waive his Fifth Amendment right. He has no, it comes up in court that he has no idea, and it struck down a lot of his testimony because of that fact. And he never asked, but it's his duty to ask, but he never asked. So that shows you that even though SBI is supposed to be a higher power, we find out that a county sheriff has more power than a special agent for the state police. That's what that shows you. He feared Hubert Stone in some way, shape, form, or fashion, because he knowingly and willingly didn't do his job. He knowingly and willingly didn't honor his oath to the Constitution. That tells you those two things, and he had testimony struck down in court. He could only testify to a limited amount of evidence, and it's the evidence they collect, and that's what the trip is for. They're taking a trip to Daniel's house, and like I say, once they get there, Underwood still don't know what's going on. It's like an unspoken thing between Green and the sheriff, but Underwood has no idea what they're there to get and what they're looking for. And they walk out behind Daniel's trailer, out to where his lawn meets the field. And Daniel just sort of kicks at the dirt and he says, "It's right there." And the sheriff says, "Yeah, go ahead." Number one, the most famous person in the world's father has been killed, according to the police. They're finding evidence associated with it. They don't have a kit. They don't have gloves. They follow no procedures. None. I mean, we're backwoods here, but we're not that backwoods. If it would have been one of their mothers, they would have had on gloves when they dug up this evidence. But they dug up a bag and was wrapped up. And they opened that bag and produced another bag. And that bag was balled up in a ball. And they opened that bag. And what they found was a national championship ring. An NBA World Championship ring from the Chicago Bulls. And what we find out is that ring was gifted from Michael Jordan to his father, James Jordan. With evidence in hand, they grabbed Daniel back up, put him back in the car, and returned him to the Robeson County Sheriff's Department. That same night, they get a search warrant for Daniel's house. The next morning, Monday morning, they show up to Daniel's house, ransack it. They find a few pieces of evidence. Inside of a shop vac, they find a .38 caliber pistol. And they ended up finding a camcorder. And while pimping through the house, they find VHS tapes. And all of them has like some kind of commercial cover. Batman, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, these type of titles. And then they just stumble across one with no cover, non-commercialized, a home type movie, VHS. And through fate, they pick up that VHS. And when they take it back and view it, there's the music video that Daniel produced at Fayetteville State with the four gentlemen. And when they further look, they find Daniel at home with a Cypress Hill song on. And Daniel's doing his own rendition of his own song over the Cypress Hill beat. With a White Sox hat on, a denim jacket, Michael Jordan's championship ring, and also a watch that Michael Jordan was given by the Chicago Bulls for his first NBA championship that Michael had gave to his father. So we find all this evidence, we find all this stuff, we got the two guys dead to rights, but there's a lot of holes. One, why did it take so long for Michael Jordan to look for his father? Two, James Jordan was from North Carolina. He knew about Robeson County. Why did he stop where he stopped? 3, there's a lot of people involved with this case that nobody ever interviewed. Why is that? 4, why was Michael Jordan never called to the stand in this case? Now I'm gonna leave you with all these questions, and we're gonna get some answer on part 2. See you later.
There wasn't any real skepticism about did they get the right guys. I mean, it just fit the template for Robeson County.
There was a single-minded decision made very early on that Larry was the good guy, Daniel was the bad guy, and Larry's going to testify against Daniel.
They were paraded into the courthouse for the cameras, and that never happens. Never happened before, never happened since. And that was Sheriff Stone. He played to the media.
They're surrounded by law enforcement. That just tells you the number of people who wanted to be involved in this case and wanted to be a part of it. It also tells you that there was real concern that somebody was going to try and kill them. That's the outrage that someone would do something that would hurt Michael Jordan.
This isn't about Michael Jordan. This isn't about his fame. This is about a man who was convicted of killing someone, and there are clear problems with the case. There was corruption going on in this department. There was concerns about how evidence had been reported, questions about the politics of the county at the time. There are so many urban legends that were born out of this case. Daniel Green, he has had this version of his story all along.
Daniel, anything you want to say to the Jordan family?
I didn't kill him. That's all I have to say.
Daniel Green has never wavered.